So, thanks everybody for jumping back on. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone is enjoying the speakers so far. It's definitely an interesting scenario doing this whole thing online, but I feel like it's going pretty well, pretty smooth. So I appreciate everybody for sticking through it with us. In this particular discussion, I'm going to be just going over how to customize reports and some of the different options that are available within the report customization process. And hopefully this will give everybody a little bit more understanding of what those options are. And then, obviously we'll be sharing these videos. We're recording every single one of these presentations, and so we'll be distributing these likely early next week once we get them all chopped up and put into their own videos. We'll post them online as well. And so for this particular one, you'll be able to reference this into the future and take a stab at creating some of your own custom reports utilizing the different options that we've got available. So we'll go ahead and get started. And so what I'll do first is open up a recording, and we're just going to go with a jump record to start here because I think it demonstrates a couple of the different options that we're able to utilize as far as report customization is concerned. Considering that we'll have calculated jump parameters, we'll have video imagery, we've got curves that we can utilize for analysis. So there's a few different things that we can mess around with in terms of creating that custom report so that it's set up for good analysis and easy interpretation, both on the operator side as well as from an educational standpoint with sharing it with the subject or the client or patient that you might be working with. So first things first, we'll run the report. We're just going to do the standard jump analysis here. Of course, the software is going to automatically define the load, flight, and landing phases for us. So in this case, all we need to do really is just click Next. And then this brings us to our standard report. And as you'll see, with any of the default reports that we've got in MR3, depending on what they're set up for, it's mostly going to consist of some sort of curve analysis or standard amplitude analysis where it's looking at various things like means and maxes and things like that. And so what I want to show for you all today is some of the different options that are available for customizing the format, making it a little bit more of your own. Some of those easy things include, even just changing the title. And what you'll notice, anytime you do select an element on the report, you'll see this dotted line that appears around the icon or that section of information. And if you double click, that's going to bring you into that settings option to which you can then make an adjustment. So in this case, maybe we just take out Naraxon and we do jump analysis report. Similarly, that could be something like changing any of the logos here, editing the information that's shown here from the patient or the record standpoint. That can be adjusted as well. And now potentially looking at reformatting the report using some of the different tools. And so first, what I want to show is so we can go ahead and edit the report. So we'll click that in this top right corner here. And within the 3.16 version and the new software, we've added this report shelf. And this is a super helpful tool for creating these custom reports. What's neat about it is you can drag different reporting elements into the shelf, and they can be stored there either to be placed back onto the same report that you're utilizing, or even saved. And let's say you like the way that this curve is set up for this report, but you want to reproduce it in another report. You can take that element, whatever it is, drop it into the shelf, and then you can utilize that in another report that you might be customizing as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to start basically from a blank report. And so I'm going to move these over into the shelf here. So it's just click, hold, drag, and then they drop down. And you'll see that they'll be named based off of what type of report element they might be. So this is essentially a blank report. And as you can see here, we've got the double click to insert an element option here. So I'll go ahead and double click that there. And what I'm going to add in here are boxes. And so you can see that there's different options for what types of report elements you would want to interact with, whether it's generic analysis, for various ways of interacting with the signals, different frequency and probability options for maybe looking at the power spectrum or utilizing these within an EMG data. Some specific analysis parameters, for instance, like our jump analysis options, or any of the pressure measurement options that you would see in any of the pressure distribution recordings, as well as things like info and multimedia. So do you want some comments to be placed down? Would you like a picture from a video that's grabbed? Any of this information. And then finally, the layout and decorations. So being able to format and set up the report so that you've got certain areas where some of these other elements might be positioned. So in this case, I'm going to do a box, and we're going to call it video analysis, because I want to be able to add some pictures to this report. I want to bring that video capture that we had and have it be the first part of the report that's seen. Next, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add another box, and we're going to call this jump performance. And then I'll just keep going down the line here. So another one, we'll do jump strategy, so breaking down the results of the jump, and then, of course, adding in the strategic elements. So how did they produce those results of that jump? And then finally, we've got our curve analysis. And so that's maybe looking at the force time curve data or any of the kinematic or EMG data that might have been collected. And, let's add another section for comments. So one thing that I like to always share with people when we're talking about editing reports, creating these custom reports, is think about the design that you want in your head beforehand. And if it's helpful, maybe you draw that out. You take a piece of scrap paper and put little squares and sections, and just to give you an idea of where you want these report elements to live on this piece of paper and how you want them to be organized. That can be super helpful when you're starting from this blank page here and you want to create that totally customized report. For any of these boxes, aside from inserting other elements into them, which we'll do here, essentially what I'm doing is just creating these little sections with titles. And, I can make edits on that as well. I can change the font size. I can change the color. Of course, we could change the text. You can see here, you can change the margins. You can change the border thickness and color as well. So you can really add some flair, add some character to this report if you'd like to make it your own. For this video analysis option, I'm going to show you how to use some of the different splitters. And so this is taking a singular element that might be, the entire page width here, and breaking it up into chunks to be able to space things out a little bit differently. So again, we'll double click. And in layout and decorations, we've got the splitter option here. And so this essentially is going to split that single element and create two elements. And then you can decide how it's going to be split. So what edge do you want it to be split from? And at what time or what point do you want that to be split? And so in this case, I want to go from the left side, and I'm actually going to put 3 pictures in here. So there's going to be a load, flight, and landing picture from the jump. And so for that, I want to be able to have 3 even sections. So of course, what's 100 divided by 3? You've got 33.3. So for splitting this one initially, we're going to do 66.6% from the left. And so that gives us our first split here. And now this second one, all I have to do, since this is essentially 2/3, this is 1/3, I just have to split this one from the same edge, 50%. Now it gives me 3 sections. And now I have 3 elements that I'm able to insert here. And this is what we're going to do from the jump analysis standpoint. So we're going to add this again. And now that I've got my section, rather, to put this element, I can decide what element I want to put in there. And so in this case, we're going to do a point of interest because I want to grab data from a specific point in time, particularly a picture, and I want it to be shown there in that small section. For each one of the different elements that we've got available, you'll see that there's these numbered settings that you can step through. For the point of interest analysis, first it would be establishing what event you want to highlight. That can either be done by marked positions, by thresholds of certain signals, Or in this case, when we have a jump analysis that actually has specific period definitions, we can use this to define where we want that to pull that video image from. So I'm going to do by period phases. I'm going to add one here, and we're going to do 50% of the loading phase, and that's going to create an image for us. So what we can do is create that, that event. If we wanted, we could include parameters as well as statistical parameters here. But for me, I just want to show an image, so I'm not actually going to add any of the calculations. One of the things that I do have to turn off is this show single event. So essentially, there's 4 jumps that was completed in this recording. If I did not, or if I had this checked, it would show me 4 images from each one of those. Instead, I want this statistical event here, and so basically it's just going to grab a picture from one of the events, and we're going to call that, the statistical representation of that movement. But when I click OK, now it gives us an image. So that's 50% within the loading phase of the jump, and now I can add it for the flight and the landing phase. So again, double click. My point of interest element that I have is essentially already set up. So if I made any changes to how big I wanted the picture to be, or what the font size would be, or anything like that, that would all be saved right now, and I would just have to click OK. However, in this case, I want to go back to events, and instead of it being 50% of the loading phase, I want it to be 50% of the flight phase. But then when I hit OK, so now we're 50% of the flight phase. And then same thing, I just want to do this, but for the landing phase. So we've got our video analysis built in here, right? So everything's looking good. We've got our pictures, good sequence here, being able to demonstrate, what's actually happening in reality. Next, this is where we can start to use that shelf function. And so earlier I had dragged out those advanced jump analysis parameters and dropped them into the shelf. What I can do now is I can pull them back into the report and just drop them right into this section where we've got our jump performance here. One trick that you can actually do as well is if you hold Control on the keyboard and drag over that information, you'll be able to set this report up, keep the element in the report and then also have it be in the shelf. So for instance, if I wanted to take this entire section, so this entire video analysis box, I can hold Control and I can drag it and drop it over to the shelf. And so now this is a box element and it's titled video analysis. And if, for instance, I wanted to bring it back in and maybe put it on top, it's very easy to move those around. But moving on, we're going to add in the jump parameters here. So I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard because I want to keep this element in the shelf because I want to actually put it here and here, but I just want to make some edits. So I'm going to hold Control, I'm going to drop that in. And now it gives us some parameters. And of course, we can set this up how we'd like. Maybe we want to change it from histograms to a curve, change the sizing, change where they separate, the curve and the statistics separate, as well as, what parameters are we showing. This is jump performance. So what is the result of the jump? We'll go ahead and do a jump height by impulse. We'll do vertical takeoff velocity, and we'll keep that reactive strength index. And so now, when I hit OK, it should, stop sharing there for a second. Give me 1 second to get back there. Whoops. My apologies. So I should be sharing here. So I had dropped those jump performance options in here, and we can make those edits, we can change them, and we've got our report shelf still. And then we also added in the jump strategy options here as well. So that would be something that was in this report shelf, and we dropped it over here. Similarly, let me take this curve analysis back out of here and our comments. So we would be able to use this report shelf to dump these elements back and forth into the report setup that we would need. And of course, you can make those adjustments on the fly. And as I mentioned, save them here so that you can add them to other reports as well. Some other things that could be added in this case, you can see here I added a page break as well. So I wanted to separate these elements a little bit more in case you wanted to have a little bit more space in between, one section of the report and the next. And then otherwise, we can take any of the elements that we've got set up in our shelf here, and we can use those to drop them back in. So in this case, we'll do the curve analysis. So now it's got our curve analysis section. Any of the curves that we had pushed through, in this case it's just the force time curves, but if we wanted to pull through the kinematic data or the EMG data, we'd be able to say, okay, we want to restrict that to any of those calculation parameters. We can call out any specific statistics as well. So in this case, we want to say what's the maximum, for instance. We can click that and add that into the report element here. So there's different ways of interacting with these report elements that make it very easy to set up and create your own custom report options. Similarly, let's say I wanted to drag in the comment section here. And in this particular case, we had originally started out with a blank section, right? So it was this double-click to insert element. We can go into our layout and decorations, our info and multimedia option here, and you can see there's different options for comments, whether it's a specific record, if it's a comment on the report itself, if it's a comment on the subject taken from the profile, as well as any of the different info that you can see available. And so I'd encourage everybody to take some time and actually open these and look through the different options that are available. Whether it's the point of interest, the channel curves, multi-period analysis, coordination plots, so plotting and signal against each other, so an XY plot. And just look through and see what's available and start to play around with some of these things. Once you get to that particular section where you've got a report that you have set up and it's in your format that you want, and it's got your logos and the titles changed and everything like that, what you can always do is when you go back to print preview, you can see that there's this save layout as. So rather than overwriting the previous report, you can hit save layout as, and you can call this something else. So we can call it, counter movement CMJ analysis, for instance, and click OK. And so now that report in this format will be saved and will be available for us to continue to access over and over again. From here, of course, you can continue to make edits. We can take those report elements that we might have kept into the shelf here, and we can apply them to other reports as well. And so really, there's several options for making sure that you can take these different reports, those default reports, and customize them a little bit.